Hello everyone and welcome to another QualiTest webinar. Before we start, please take a moment to check your audio-visual settings while I run through a few items about how you can participate in today's event. Today's webinar will last approximately 30 to 40 minutes with 15 minutes at the end for your questions. As always, you'll have the opportunity to submit your questions to today's presenter by typing them into the questions pane of the control panel. The control panel is situated on the right-hand side of your screen. You can send these questions in at any time and we'll collect your questions and address these during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. A reminder that a recording of this webinar will follow within 24 hours along with a survey. I'm now delighted to introduce you to today's presenter, who will tell you a bit more about himself shortly, Leandro Melendez. Leandro, over to you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. It's such a pleasure to be back here presenting and being able to share some of the knowledge with all of you. To start off, first a quick introduction from me. I am Leandro Melendez, Performance Test Manager in QualiTest Group. As well, you might have seen my face showing up here in some of the video series that we do at QualiTest Beyond Performance, where we try to explain topics similar to the ones that you will be seeing here. And as well, some history with performance testing, some of the practices that you will hear. I have been presenting this on many venues for public speaking presentations, conferences, and side notes, some of this information as well goes into the podcast that I contribute, Perfights en Español, and as Señor Performo in many of the networks and social spaces that we can get in touch through. But aside from that, before we begin, I want to talk a little bit about QualiTest. We are the world's #1 pure play quality assurance company, and this has been certified and added up by Gartner for the past 6 years. We have been named as a visionary QA and testing services company in that magic quadrant where everybody wants to be in. And as you may know or not know, quality assurance is the core of what we do. We do everything around quality, but that includes and it's integrated a lot in the topic that we are going to be talking about today, which let's move on to. We are going to talk today about Accelerate. All this presentation is around this topic where we're going to be looking into ways how to get better at producing software and to give some key elements. We'll give an introduction first about this topic. After that, we will talk about some key performance indicators for success according to these best practices that we are going to be presenting today. And later, we will dive through some of the key elements, the things that are super important for you and your organization to get rolling and to accelerate the success of your companies. So let's dive in. First, an introduction to Accelerate and why I chose the topic for this presentation to be this. Most of what we are going to be talking is going to be based on the findings presented on the book Accelerate, with a subtitle, The Science of Lean Software and DevOps, Building and Scaling High-Performing Technology Organizations. This is a book written by Nicole Forsgren, Jess Humble, and Gene Kim. Gene and Jess, you might remember them from other books like the Phoenix Project, the DevOps Handbook, and the latest Unicorn Project. All of them, the 4 books that I am talking about today, are awesome books, will help your organizations, will help them to ramp up, improve the processes, improve everything, figure out where you are having problems in speeding up your processes in your organization, and find out some keys to success, because many organizations are doing some practices, not completely wrong, but the old ways, which most probably are not bringing benefit to them. So through some of the things that we're going to talk about today are going to help your organizations. But if you can, I highly recommend that you get a dive into these books. What I'm going to talk today is a quick or easier resume or short version of it, but these are treasures of information. Now, what is talked about in these books is a little bit how to innovate, how to manage and get this technical innovation through software, creating software for your organizations. What we're going to talk about today is not only a summary of the books, as I mentioned that I was going to give you a deep dive, but Qualitest, as an organization, we provide services, we help multiple other organizations, and we have witnessed, and I personally have also witnessed, many organizations that implement some of these practices and how they become a key to their success. And not only that, we often help the organizations to implement these practices. As you will see, we know them are part and embedded on the testing processes, the core of our organization, and help them and guide them to implement them in a similar way to how we are going to be doing today. Some of the findings of this book is that most successful organizations produce and use great software. This might sound a bit dumb or redundant to mention, but many organizations are stumbling on having and creating this great software in order to help them and propel them into being successful organizations. All of this, again, is enabled by tech innovation, being at the point of the spear in the best solutions that can be pushed out. And all of this is enabled and produced by having multiple elements like the right culture, good approaches, enabling speed, accelerating. Again, this might sound like a pun during this presentation often, but it indeed is. It accelerates the pace at which your organizations do things and how fast can they produce and accelerate to that success. Another key element here that we're going to be mentioning is that a goal or a thing that you have to be paying a lot of attention is to your organization to be successful is to measure its performance. And don't to be confused with performance testing, where it's another area where I play a lot in, but the performance in software development. How well do you do things in terms of software? And we are going to talk about some measurements that are going to be key for that. So without waiting more, let's start getting into it. The next module or the next part of this presentation, it's going to be completely around those indicators, those performance indicators that you need to pay attention and measure. How are you doing? While doing well on these indicators will pretty much predict if you're going to be a successful organization through this software producing processes. So let's dive in. As I mentioned, performance measurement is going to be a key element that you need to be constantly paying attention for your organization to succeed and to keep a good pace. As I mentioned earlier, I'm not talking about general QA performance testing, but performance metrics of your software producing capabilities, how well you're doing on the key elements that we're going to be talking about in a moment. These key metrics, as I said, generally, and it was very widely discussed and presented in the books that I mentioned earlier, that these indicators will predict success of your organizations. The books had several studies that were done at a multitude of organizations trying to divide what are the things that indicate or predict if they are going to be successful, how well are they going to be doing in the future. And these four metrics that we're going to talk about are key. If you want to be a successful organization, pretty much try to make sure that you are complying or getting good metrics on those key performance indicators that we're going to talk about. It's a little bit self-evident, but because from all that I have been mentioning, that it predicts how good your organization will do, it, I think, is the first step that your organization should be taking to try to achieve this success. Is a first step. Pay attention to it. Don't lose them out of sight. And to these performance indicators, 4 measurements are the ones that you need to pay the most attention to when you try to measure how well are you doing in terms of software producing and using good practices. So the performance indicators that we are going to take into account, first, the deployment frequency, where releases into production are the first number that you need to pay attention to. How many releases do I do in a period of time, or how often do I release into production? And I'm not referring in this area to releasing into the QA environment, to having into pre-prod or ready to. No, that it's arriving, being shipped and ready for the end user to start working with those features that you are working on, available to the end user. How often do you push new stuff into production, ready for your users to work with it or see it, give you feedback, and many other things that we're going to be talking about in a bit. The next is tested and ready. How many tasks you have done and ready for QA, ready to be used, and that these deployments are functional, that you don't take too long to get to production, that they are completed, completely ready to get there. Now, the other metric is going to be the frequency on this performance indicator. As I mentioned earlier, the number of period of, let's say it again, the number of releases that you have in a period of time. Let's say I have 4 releases in a week. That's the first way to see my indicator. The other one is how often do I do it? Every 1 hour, every 8 hours, every 3 days. That's going to be your frequency metric. How often do you do it, or the period of time that it takes you to do a new release on average. I know that at times you might have a few days that you don't have a release and a few others that are super active. Get an average and keep that as an indicator. On this one as well, I want to point out what would be a bad indicator. Many organizations say, yeah, we're releasing into production often. We do it every 3 months, every 6 months, up to what was indicated and presented in the books, and to my opinion as well, it should be often. If you get a release into production every 3 months, even every month, it might not be fast enough. A good indicator for successful organizations, you might have heard the big tech giants such as Netflix, Google, Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft. These organizations manage to do several hundreds or even thousands of releases per hour. And those are some of the big indicators for success in your organization. If you say I'm doing it once a month, it's not completely bad, but you might want to try to reach faster into production what you are producing. We are going to talk in a moment why that is key. But to roll back to this, try to close this point on this indicator. measure it by the releases into production, that how often do you do them or the period of time in between each one of them. Make sure that when they arrive there, they are ready and tested and hopefully free of bugs. That cannot be 100% guaranteed, but you should try to do your best and try to not to do it every 3, 6, 9 months or a year. That's completely an awful indicator. Let's move on to the next indicator, lead time. Here, lead time talks about what is the time that passes in between you having an idea or a requirement into having it ready in production, ready to use, going through all the steps that the process has to follow before you can push it into production. We know that the SDLC, the software development lifecycle, has multiple steps in it that need to be worked on before something is in front of the user. An indicator here is that lead time. How long does it take you on average from an idea or a requirement to have it in front of your customer? Hopefully that time is low, similar to the frequent releases. So the duration here, as I mentioned, has a time from idea to production going through all the steps. Coding, testing, the release process, every post-release or for the release that you have to compile, to build, to test, to run other processes around it, update the database, any of those, again, you have to optimize your processes and everything to try to make it as fast as possible from when you have an idea till when you can use it. Again, all this time, this indicator should include the time from idea till you use it. Take an average of all those lead times that you have. Again, as I said earlier in the release into production time, we might better get averages because at times it will go super fast. We might be super efficient. Some others, we might have some hiccups here and there. Try to get an average. Try to have it in a short period of time. Again, not weeks, not months. Probably a week might not be that bad. Try to ensure or assure that you can get it rolling fast. Now, moving on to the third indicator is the recovery time. Once you get into production, we want to know if there's a problem on it, and after we get a problem on it, we want to be able to fix it fast. And this is going to be the third indicator, the recovery time. How fast can you fix a problem that you identify? This includes receiving feedback on this problem, this defect, this problem that appears in production, or even this refers mostly about identifying things in production, but could be a little before in pre-prod, in QA environments. But getting that feedback should be fast is a key element to figuring out. Then diagnosing the problem. Once you identify what is causing it, where it comes from, you need to create and implement a fix for it. That as well usually takes time. It's pretty much like creating another requirement. After you fix that problem, that you tested, that you implemented, it's ready, that it worked, that you're sure that it's ready to be shipped and published again into production. To give an analogy here, this recovery time becomes a new requirement. That, remember the past slide that we mentioned, the going a lead time from an idea or a requirement to being usable in code. Here, this is the same. When you identify a defect, hopefully do it fast, immediately, and it rings a bell right away when you get it. You send it back as a requirement, start to work through it, do all the due diligence and steps, and get it to release into production so that you quickly can fix a problem. Again, this should be really, really fast. We cannot wait months or weeks to get this released into production for a fix. One includes rollbacks, but the preferred state is to quickly send an update and fix everything. Who wouldn't want, if you identify there's a big problem in your application, to have it fixed and in production, let's say in an hour, a couple of hours, a day tops, and your users and customers will be satisfied right away, right? So let's move on to the fourth and last indicator for success that you need to pay attention in your organization. Fix rate. This is another key indicator that you need to pay attention, which refers to how often a fix is required in production. In other words, the defect rate. How often do you have to be doing the past step? How often do you have to fix something that gets troubles when trying to be worked on through? This, of course, this indicator, we should try to keep it low and have a measurement of the severity of the defects that we would be finding here and there for the application. This is crucial as well to have detection points, as I mentioned earlier, where we want to know right away when there's a problem and to be triggering an alarm, an alert, a log, or something that we can pay attention, index it, and add it to this indicator. This, as I mentioned, has to be tried to kept low. We want to not to have to be fixing every time, like a car, as you see here in the image, that we often have to stop and change the oil, and it's now throwing out smoke, it's out of water. All of these issues, we should try to prevent them in previous steps. We will go again into some recommendations to try to minimize this, but a low fix rate is again key for your organization to be successful. So, summing up, it is a recommendation for our organization to have all four key indicators at good levels. The first one, we want our organization to be doing frequent releases into production. Hopefully one release or multiple releases every sprint, at the very least, I would say once a month, as I mentioned, and like other organizations, the giants that have multiple per day, thousands per hour, that would be awesome that you can right away, you have a change requested, you have it in production in a few hours. Even, as I said, multiple organizations that do them per minute, hundreds and thousands, I think, per minute. But if that is too aggressive, just make sure that you can push them often as possible. The next indicator that an organization should have is fast recovery. If there's a problem, we need to be fixed up in moments. Try to go as fast as possible. Fast fix and release it. The next one is the lead time. How often can we get it from an idea, requirement, a fix to production? This is key to be low. Every organization should do their best to try to keep this at the lowest possible, to move easily through all the software development lifecycle and push all the new features in a sprint or even as needed, even faster probably. Focusing on removing any slower or blocker or something that doesn't allow this to flow as fast as possible. And last, again, low number of fixes needed on production and your systems that are out there. A constant improvement on your processes will decrease this number, and that's the focus. We need to keep them low to not to be wasting our time on fixes and rolling back new requirements that might be cool for our customers or users. We might not be able to push them because we are having to constantly fixing problems that made it to production. So that's another. Organizations that want to be successful should focus on these four indicators. Super important to keep them up or down, depending on the ones that you need to keep up and down. Frequent releases, a lot of releases, tiny time for releasing to production. Recovery time to be tiny, super fast to recover if anything is detected. Low time from idea to production, super fast again to get things rolling, and a low number of fixes needed. And now you may be wondering, how may I achieve all these awesome performance indicators that for many organizations might sound a little bit aggressive, high bars to achieve, but they are not so much. We need to focus on some key elements for our organizations to be able to succeed into complying with these awesome indicators or performance indicators and to be successful. So let's dive a little bit into them. There are 6 main areas that I personally identify. The books that I mentioned detail them a little bit more widely and in more topics, but I think these are the key ones that we need to pay attention to. And for the sake of time in this presentation, I focused on the main ones. I didn't take out of scope on this presentation that many. These account for most of what is important. These elements, as I mentioned earlier from the books, they did a lot of studies, went with lots of organizations, asked and checked what were things that were enabling them to succeed on these performance indicators. Struggling organizations generally do not pay attention to these elements or don't do them in the best way possible. We're going to be talking a little about them, but the key elements that you need to pay attention are such as culture, technology and architecture, management, to be lean, pay attention on the teams and the people, and have awesome leaders. We will go into each one of them and detail some of the elements that propel and that you need to pay attention on each one of those categories on your organization, because your organization may think that they are doing their best on some of these areas to improve, but might not be done in the right direction. And there are some outdated practices that as well we need to pay attention on our companies and organizations. So let's dive into the first one. The culture. There are some key cultural elements that need to be present in your organization to predict that it will move on and succeed. The first one is among your people, there must be a shared element of trust in each other and responsibility shared on all the team. This is a key element because the organizations that used to be siloed, I am just the database team, we are just the DevOps team, we are just the testing and QA team, those distinctions and lines have shown up to hurt severely organization and slow them down, sorry. And all these should be barriers that need to be brought down, and share the responsibility, share the trust, and know that your team members are capable of certain things, and that you can trust each other that they will do their capabilities and that they can do them or are enabled, and that the rest of the people can also pick up if some of them are not available. Because we are all a team. The culture here is a team culture, share responsibilities, where if someone cannot do it for any reason, hopefully we can trust in them that they are doing their best, and that the rest of the team trust in each of ourselves that we are doing our best. But sometimes they're like, yeah, sorry, I'm just working on this. Can you pick it up? That's a shared responsibility where the rest of the team should be able to pick on tasks when someone is not capable for any circumstance, and have it shared all over the team. This rings a bell a lot with agile philosophies, and it is embedded on them. Another element is that the team members need to feel safe to fail, because we want them to fail here and there, to try new things, to learn, to grow, to implement all the ideas that they have. And maybe some of those ideas might not be in the best direction, but the only way to find it is by trying it. And other times it might be a new technology, a different sets of options to apply a functionality or the same goal. and everyone needs to feel safe to fail. As I mentioned earlier, we should be able to eventually super quickly fix any problem that we might have with our platform solution software. So if we have an issue, even we had a human, normal, natural error, we need to feel safe and not to fear for our heads at every single step that we give in our organization, because that slows us down a lot. And we stop to innovate, we stop to try things just because, well, if I do a boo-boo, used to say my grandma, um, we might get punished. We don't want our teams to feel that. We want everyone to feel safe, and this will enable an innovation mindset. Everyone will be able to propose things, to implement things, and not to have to jump through several rings of fire to be able to publish or get one idea out to be tried out. If we try many of these ideas, that is the key to finding success. Maybe some of them will be incredibly successful and propel everything else. And if we don't allow this person to feel safe and innovate, well, we might not be moving ahead as much as we want to. And as I mentioned earlier, collaboration. Everyone must be collaborative, in touch, in connection. The shared responsibility should be among everybody. And this way, we all will be able to collaborate in a very synergistic, and it sounds like a happy world, happy path scenario, but that's what we are striving to have a fun environment when everybody is jolted and excited about what they are working on, not my single tasks, all the project that I'm working on, and start thinking, hey, what if we do this in the database level? What if we do this with our customers? We present this and that everybody has shared ideas and everyone can collaborate. All this that I have been mentioned is one of the key elements, and personally I would think is one of the most important ones to pay attention to. The culture is key because it's what is going to propel your organization. Moving on, we have the technology and the architecture. Here, the focus should change a little bit from past practices where the organizations were looking just at technologies that were the edge or the biggest ones. The focus of technology and architecture should be mostly to enable the teams and facilitate them to do the continuous delivery, to do those small and fast releases, and oriented at having feedback, quick feedback from what we are releasing. All those circles and cycles that I mentioned earlier, that we need to reach quickly production and quickly get information from production and bounce back with a fix, that should be enabled by our technology. Any other focus should be put aside. Anything that our team requires to be enabled to do the continuous delivery, to do especially small and fast releases. I will make emphasis on small. We will get into that in a moment. But small and fast releases should be oriented, allowed by our technology and architecture, so that after that we can push fast and receive feedback fast. Inside of the technology and architecture, we have more elements. As I mentioned, it should enable the teams to go faster. Another element is that it should be coupled, loosely coupled. And again, the technology that we have needs to interconnect with each other almost transparently. These silos that I mentioned on the teams that happened before, I'm only database, I'm only development, I'm only this, the team should communicate and share, so that solutions and architectures, they need to be able to communicate with each other transparently, automatically almost, and be as open as possible. All those old monoliths and solutions that were so enclosed that we needed to buy special connectors, special communication protocols to enable them to communicate with each other, that's a big no-no. Technology that is loosely coupled. Another one is to focus on tools. Many organizations focus on we are a Microsoft framework company, we are an AWS framework, we are Java, we are get divorced from those ideas of being married with the tool, married with the technology. Whatever your team needs to achieve this interoperability, deployability, and testability, to go fast, to communicate with each other, should be your key source. Not a single tool, not a single brand or company trademark, but functionalities. Functionalities, interconnectivity, ease to pick up. Most of our organizations and teams should be able to pick up most of the tools that we need. And if they need to propose one, they should be open and allowed to and empowered to pick anything that will enable them. This technology, again, should not be focused on tools. We're married with XX tool. We're married with YY platform. No. Tools, whichever we need, we will use and implement them as long as they are good on interoperability, that they can talk to each other easily, deployability, that we can release on them fast and efficiently, and that we can as well easily test on them, automate them, and have quality assurance around it. The next element is management. Management needs to have a switch of focus from past practices to just enablement and guidance. Management here will just be opening the doors and giving direction to the people that is managed by providing all the tools needed, as I mentioned earlier. And if the teams require coaching, training, guidance on those tools, on technology and methodology, or whatever is needed, management should enable it. That's a key element. You don't know how to do something? I will train you and help you right away. And especially, and I think I have hinted this often in the presentation, and I am dying to get into it, but especially since we're going to be working on tiny pieces, manageable and chewable, we are not going to be doing any big bites. These learning processes should not be that complicated to start to pick up for most of our team members. Management as well here needs to define clear goals, specific, small, clear, and specific goals in our organizations to be able to thrive and blaze through. And last, management needs to have an eagle eye, paying close attention to the performance metrics that we mentioned before. Those are the new guiding principles for management. Those performance metrics enable our team to release often into production, that they can release quickly any new item or requirement, that the team can fix everything, and as well that we don't have too many problems. That should be the main goal of management. Enabling great culture and software delivery. Happy team, happy people, productive tools, and hopefully happy tools. The next one is to focus on a lean product development. Here, it's crucial that the organization starts to think on a lean way. What does this mean? To have small batches of work, tiny, even if you could call it microscopic. Each batch of work has to be very punctual, oriented at a goal, and not to have these massive scopes that we used to have in the past, where everything was so big, massive, and at the same blast, that's why we had those slow production releases. We need to enable tiny batches of work so that we can release them frequently. Here, this is a tiny functionality. It's pushed to production, test it, try it. Is it good? Is it bad? And with that, we can gather requirements from our customers and metrics. The metrics from what we just released and from new requirements. A customer might tell us that we need this new feature. We will piece it up and put it together in a way that we can, in little pieces, little bites, be pushing it into production and get feedback out of it. A key element here that I will mention is that as well, those tiny pieces enable us to have quick feedback and correct course if it is needed, if we notice that something, or even if we release something bad, wrong, faulty with bugs, or in the wrong direction, some functionality that our customers rarely use or truly need it. That's key to be lean. Another lean element, not for just the product development, is on our teams. All these practices need to be accepted, absorbed by not only our companies, but the teams that are working through them. They need to be empowered to drive themselves, to be lean, to take changes in direction if they need to change the technology, to port it, to migrate it if it's needed, and to not to be leashed or tied up to committees, boards, and big change management. Our teams need to be lean, do tiny movements and changes that will benefit them so that they can move rapidly. They can change direction, they can implement new things. That they need to be able to discover, experiment, deliver in a quick pace. This is key as well to be enable our teams to be lean. Tiny deliveries, tiny releases, tiny bites, and be able to innovate, do yourselves to not to be tied up. Now, moving on, we have the leaders. Different from management, because the leaders pretty much provide examples, they enable, they are like these Sherpas in the mountains that will guide you through the journey, who have the know-how, the understanding, the technologies. They are very different from management. Management will just focus on providing, enabling, and following up the performance indicators and providing whatever is needed. But the leaders are the guides again with the Sherpas. They should be knowledgeable, technology-wise, have more or less a respect among the team, understand the solution, and have a clear goal vision, know where we are trying to move to, and give that with the example to our team members that these people that fire up the rest of the people to follow that idea, that to be the Steve Jobs that give the examples, and we're going to thrive into making this beautiful, presentable, efficient, quickly, giving that passion to the team. And the leaders also should enable some freedom to the team members to, as I mentioned earlier, experiment, try new things, propose new things, and even to contradict the leader. If the leader is like, I'm a master on this technology and we will present, the team members should be able to say, hey, Mr. Leader, I think this other direction might be better. And the leader should be like, okay, let's, you're free. Let's try it. I trust you that this is a good decision, and let's analyze it. It's key for the leaders to support this type of activities, feelings, and trust among everything. But not only that, as I mentioned, not only enabling and everything, but they need to help, inspire, give everything to be like this role models, to call it in a way, and help like superheroes, I would say, empowering all your team and helping, providing, as I said, an example where, how, and the things that how we should behave, how well should we do our work, that passion to be shared with the example, enable and provide help on those tools, provide the knowledge. Again, a leader needs to be knowledgeable on what is being done. And that's why now we have more clarified that distinction between management and a leader. Management should provide and help just with, let's call it bureaucratic stuff, and provide that guidance. But the leader is the one that brings all that knowledge, gives them the safety, and probably goes through the budget to enable having those tools, those cool servers, architecture, whatever is needed. But you need this leadership to teach, inspire, and mostly retain key people, because that as well, when your team members do not respect leadership, of course they will start to leave, and you don't want to lose key people that are knowledgeable, that start to understand your solution, that are great synergistic elements in your team, you want to retain those great resources. And with all these examples, in other areas I have seen that good leadership, this example, this heroic role model, the not so great resources, to call it in a way, start to get discouraged probably, or powered up to become great resources. So those are the key elements that organizations need to do and start to pay attention. Those recommendations, I hope that will help your organizations to improve, accelerate, and become even better. And as I mentioned, guarantee the success of your organization to thrive, grow, improve. And as well as I mentioned, we have witnessed firsthand many of those examples and even helped on many of those organizations. So if you need any help on that, let us know. And let's see if we have any questions. Sarah, on to you. Are there any questions from our audience?
Yes, thank you, Leandro. Thanks for being so thorough. You've given everyone a lot of useful and key information there and improvements to consider for their organisations. So, so thanks again. We have got questions. Let me jump onto those now. So, number one, how can an organisation start to implement and transition into these practices you mentioned?
So I think, and for what we have seen in the examples, the first thing I would like to start to see is the decision to be taken towards doing these frequent production releases. That first wish will start to make you work into, okay, how do we enable these frequent production releases? A quick warning here is it should not be like a mandate, because often the organization starts to run, the elements, the team members start to run like headless chicken. Your goal, your first indicator needs to be, hey, we need to push into production more often. And that's an awesome first step to start to take the every other step that you need to take to enable your organization. So I would say commit into frequent releases, and that will do a waterfall and big bang chain reaction of things that will start to propel your organization. But first, keep in mind, get frequent releases and pay attention to the performance indicators.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so second question here I've got is, how does all this connect with agile methodologies?
Well, it's deeply linked. I think the first wishes or requirements to start to develop something like an agile methodology was from these frequent releases. You might have heard this key element of the agile methodologies, all of them, to be these sprints. The goal for the sprints is not just to have daily stand-ups and correct curves if you are trying to implement something or know your burn down rate, but to enable these frequent releases, hopefully with an adequate agile pace or methodology. You will be pushing at least every sprint, and that's why I was saying a monthly release into production might be too slow. The 2-week sprint, that's the reason. You hopefully are pushing at least every sprint, every 2 weeks. You're pushing into production, and most of the terms that I have mentioned, lean and small bite sizes, just requirements, not full features to be pushed. All this is interlocked, and that's the biggest reason why you may want to jump into an agile methodology. Sadly, many organizations are just doing it because it's the cool new kid in the block and everyone wants to be keeping up with those Joneses. But it's to enable frequent pushes, quick feedback, and quick reaction time for any problem. That's Everything is severely interlinked in between Agile and all that I talked here. Agile is one of the other tools that will enable you to do all these fabulous things that we have just talked about.
Excellent. I think we've got time for 2 more questions. I'm just looking at the time. So we're just coming up to the hour. So let's get to this one. What is the recommended frequency of releases into production?
So again, it's not so punctual, and it will depend a lot on your organization. Your software might be stable and you truly do not need to push frequent releases into production. You don't have new requirements, and they did this, I built it, and that's it. But the ones that require frequent releases, that you want to push something quickly so that your customers can start to work with it, see it, and give you guidance if you are doing it right or you need to change direction, all of that is recommended to be frequent. Again, as I said during the presentation, probably once a month is not as fast as it should be. And definitely every 2, 3, 6, 9 months, a year, that's not a good indicator. Anything under a month, I would say it's pretty healthy, as long as you are keeping up with the other performance indicators, that you are not just pushing frequently, mindlessly code into production that might be broken, that you cannot fix. You have no idea what happens with it after you push into production. That's not the right. As long as you can push often with all the careful steps and tiny bite chunks pushed into production, I would say, and again, from the previous question, Agile methodologies, that's why you have the 2-week sprint. I would say that's more or less healthy. Every 2 weeks you push some of the new features, finished, tested, and ready features or functionalities into your system. I think that should be more than good. And if you can and are in that step, you can go super aggressive like the tech giants and do hundreds or thousands of releases per hour or per minute. That's up to your maturity. But I would say at least every 2 weeks, that's a good time to, again, respond. If you find that there's a problem and you need to update in your sprint, quickly push a fix, react, and change direction. So I think those would be.
Good advice, Leandro. Makes perfect sense to me. Okay, so last question here. If our organization manages to do a release once a month, is that a good performance indicator?
Well, I think this other question goes in line with what were the past questions, but again, it's not bad to do it once a month. You might not be so efficient or so quote unquote accelerated, but you're doing pretty fine with those a month. You are ahead of many organizations that do not push but every 3 months or 5, 6 months. But if you're at a month, I would say you're fine. You're ahead of the curve, but try to improve it and try to push every 2 weeks. Very similar to the last question. I think that would be the healthiest. Thanks for the questions.
Great stuff. Thank you, Leandro. We've finished actually just in time. So as you heard, our webinar is now coming to a close. Before we go, I'd like to thank our presenter, Leandro, for sharing his wealth of expertise, and an extended thanks to our audience for joining us today. If you have any questions about any of the discussion in today's webinar, please reach out to me and I will make sure Leandro or the relevant person receives your inquiry. My contact details are within an email which will follow once the webinar ends, and in the webinar feedback survey. Just a heads up before we close, you can save your seat at our upcoming webinars by visiting our website, qualitestgroup.com/webinars. It leaves me now to say goodbye, so until next time, when we look forward to you joining us again, all the best and goodbye. Goodbye, everyone.